She married the Hell's Angel leader. Nobody dared to touch. The shocking truth broke her. A quiet woman marries the most feared biker in town. And everyone thinks they know why. They think she's scared. They think he forced her. But the truth is so much darker and so much more dangerous because the man everyone fears, he saved her brother from a cartel execution, then asked for only one thing in return: a marriage that was never meant to be real. But once she steps into his violent world, she discovers a secret he's been hiding for years. A secret tied to blood, betrayal, and the one person he loved most. Now she must face a terrifying choice: stay beside the man no one dares to challenge, or run before the cartel comes for all of them. What will she do when the truth finally breaks her, and the danger turns toward her door? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The morning air held a crisp bite as Anna Ellison sat in her sister's car, parked outside the Willow Bend courthouse. Her fingers traced the soft cream fabric of her dress, a hasty purchase from the department store just yesterday. Through the windshield, she could see clusters of townspeople gathering, their faces a mix of curiosity and judgment. "You don't have to do this," her sister whispered, reaching over to squeeze her hand. Anna managed a weak smile. "Yes, I do." She knew exactly why she was here, and that knowledge steadied her even as her hands trembled. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the car. The courthouse loomed before her, its red brick facade suddenly intimidating despite the many times she'd walked past it on her way to the library. The whispers started immediately. She could hear them carried on the breeze, sharp and cutting like paper cuts. "That's Anna Ellison, isn't it? The librarian? Getting married to that biker. What would her parents have said?" Mrs. Peterson, who taught Sunday school, stood with other church elders near the courthouse steps. Their disapproving looks felt like physical weight on Anna's shoulders. Officer Roberts and Deputy Miller leaned against their patrol car, exchanging meaningful glances. These were people she'd known her whole life, people who'd checked out books from her library, people who'd watched her grow up. Now they looked at her like she was a stranger. The courthouse doors felt heavier than usual as Anna pulled them open. The old marble floors echoed with her footsteps as she made her way to the small courtroom where civil ceremonies were held. And there he was, Jax Maddox, the Iron Saint of the Hell's Angels, standing quietly at the front of the room. He cut an imposing figure in his black dress shirt and dark jeans, his usual leather vest absent today. His hands were clasped behind his back, tattoos visible on his knuckles, but his stance was respectful, almost military in its precision. When he turned to look at her, his expression remained unreadable, but his eyes held a gentleness that few would expect from a man with his reputation. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. The judge's words seemed to come from far away as Anna focused on keeping her hands steady while exchanging rings. Jax's voice was low and clear when he said, "I do," and Anna's own response felt like it belonged to someone else. There was no music, no flowers, no celebration, just the scratch of a pen on marriage certificates and the heavy silence of a handful of witnesses, mostly members of Jax's inner circle who stood quietly at the back of the room. The drive to Jax's house was quiet. Anna watched the familiar streets of Willow Bend give way to open country roads. His ranch-style home sat on a few acres of land, set back from the main road. It was modest, but well-maintained, with a large garage that likely housed his motorcycle collection. "I'll show you around," Jax said, his first words since they'd left the courthouse. His voice was deep but gentle, like he was trying not to startle her. The house was simple but clean, with solid furniture and bare walls. The kitchen had dated appliances, but everything worked. Jax moved through the space with surprising ease for such a large man, pulling out pans and ingredients. "You don't have to cook," Anna offered, but he shook his head. "You should eat something." His movements were decisive, but somewhat awkward as he worked with the chicken and seasonings. Anna sat at the kitchen table, watching him cook. The smell of burning chicken soon filled the air, followed by the distinct aroma of over-seasoned potatoes. Jax's frown deepened as he placed the slightly blackened food on plates. "I'm not much of a cook," he admitted, setting a plate before her. "Thank you," she said softly, and meant it. There was something touching about this feared man trying to make dinner for her, even if the results were less than perfect. As they ate, Anna's mind wandered to the real reason she sat here, in this kitchen, wearing a new wedding ring. 2 weeks ago, her brother Luke had stumbled into her apartment, terrified and babbling about cartel members and a drug deal gone wrong. Before she could even process what was happening, men with guns had followed. If Jax hadn't been watching Luke, hadn't stepped in when he did. She looked across the table at her new husband, this man who'd saved her brother's life, and then offered this solution to keep Luke safe. Marriage to him meant protection, meant the cartel would think twice before touching Luke again. It was a business arrangement, nothing more. Later that night, Anna lay in the guest bedroom, listening to the sounds of Jax moving around in the living room. The couch springs creaked as he settled in for the night. She stared at the ceiling, her new ring catching the moonlight from the window. The bed was comfortable, the sheets clean and fresh, but sleep felt impossible. Her mind raced with questions about what this marriage would really mean, how their lives would work, what tomorrow would bring. Somewhere in the quiet house, the man she'd married was sleeping on his couch, giving her space, keeping his distance. Anna rolled onto her side, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders, wondering what kind of life she'd agreed to, and if she would ever feel like more than just a solution to a problem. Sunlight filtered through unfamiliar curtains as Anna blinked awake, momentarily confused by her surroundings. The events of yesterday came rushing back. The courthouse, the whispers, the wedding ring that now felt foreign on her finger. A rich coffee aroma drifted under the door, pulling her from her thoughts. She smoothed her hair and straightened her pajamas before stepping into the hallway. The hardwood floors creaked softly under her feet as she made her way towards the kitchen. The sight that greeted her made her pause in the doorway. Jax stood at the stove, his imposing frame hunched over a griddle. A light dusting of flour covered his black t-shirt, and a deep furrow of concentration marked his brow as he wielded a spatula with the same intensity he probably brought to everything else in his life. 2 perfectly round pancakes were browning on the griddle, and he was watching them like they might try to escape. "Good morning," Anna said softly, not wanting to startle him. He looked up, nodding once. "Coffee's ready," he said, gesturing to a fresh pot with his free hand. "Mugs are in the cabinet above." Anna found a simple white mug and poured herself some coffee, adding a splash of cream she found in the fridge. She watched as Jax attempted to flip the pancakes, his massive hands seemingly too large for the delicate operation. One pancake folded in half, and she heard him mutter something under his breath. "Would you like some help?" she offered gently. He shook his head, straightening the collapsed pancake with determined focus. "I got it." The breakfast that followed was quiet, but not entirely uncomfortable. The pancakes were slightly misshapen but perfectly edible, and Anna appreciated the effort he'd clearly put into making them. They ate in silence, the morning sun streaming through the kitchen window, creating patterns on the worn tablecloth. "There's a charity ride today," Jax said finally, breaking the silence. "For veterans. Would you..." Would you want to come?" Anna's fork paused halfway to her mouth. She hadn't expected this invitation, hadn't thought about what being married to a Hell's Angel might actually mean in practice. The thought of climbing onto a motorcycle made her stomach flutter with nerves. But she saw something in Jax's expression, a hint of hope, maybe, that made her nod. "I'd like that," she said, and was surprised to find she meant it. An hour later, Anna found herself standing in the driveway, staring at Jax's gleaming black motorcycle. He handed her a leather jacket and a helmet, helping her adjust the straps with careful hands. "Hold on to me," he instructed as she settled behind him. "Lean when I lean." Anna wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the solid warmth of him through his leather jacket. The motorcycle roared to life beneath them, and she tightened her grip instinctively. As they pulled out onto the road, she closed her eyes, her heart pounding with each turn and acceleration. But gradually, as the miles passed, she found herself relaxing. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of pine trees and summer grass. She opened her eyes to watch the landscape blur past, feeling an unexpected thrill of excitement. They arrived at a large veterans center on the outskirts of town. The parking lot was filled with motorcycles, their chrome gleaming in the sun. Anna had braced herself for chaos, for the rough atmosphere she'd always associated with motorcycle gangs. Instead, she found something entirely different. Members of the Hells Angels' inner circle moved through the crowd with purpose and warmth. She watched as a gray-haired biker with tattoos covering his arms gently helped an elderly widow from her car, escorting her to a seat of honor near the refreshment table. Another member was stacking care packages filled with necessities and comfort items for disabled veterans. Jax stayed close to Anna throughout the day, but not hovering, just present, a steady presence at her shoulder. He seemed to sense when she felt overwhelmed, quietly steering her toward quieter areas or explaining different aspects of the event. She watched him interact with veterans and their families, saw how they respected him not out of fear, but genuine regard. The highlight of the day was the ride itself. Dozens of bikes escorting veterans through town, raising awareness and funds. This time, when Anna climbed behind Jax, she did so with excitement rather than fear. She found herself smiling beneath her helmet as they led the procession, the rumble of engines behind them like a chorus of support for their cause. The sun was setting when they finally returned home, the day's events having passed in a blur of surprising discoveries. Anna's legs were slightly shaky as she dismounted the bike, but her heart felt full. "Thank you," she said as they stood in the driveway, "for letting me see this, for showing me this part of your world." Jax nodded, his expression soft in the fading light. He disappeared into the garage for a moment, returning with something held carefully in his large hands. Wild daisies, their white petals slightly dusty but beautiful, gathered from somewhere along their ride. Without a word, he placed them in a simple glass of water on the kitchen counter. Then, just as silently, he gathered his pillow and blanket and headed for the couch, leaving Anna standing in the kitchen, staring at the unexpected gift. She touched one delicate petal, this symbol of gentleness from a man the whole town feared, and felt something shift in her understanding of the complicated situation she'd entered into. The daisies seemed to glow in the last rays of sunlight streaming through the window, a quiet reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things could be found in the most unexpected places. Monday morning arrived with a gentle fog hanging over Willow Bend, softening the edges of buildings and muting the usual bustle of Main Street. Anna pulled into her familiar parking spot behind the library, her wedding ring catching the weak sunlight as she gathered her belongings. The weight of it still felt foreign on her finger, a constant reminder of how much her life had changed in just 2 days. The library's worn brick facade welcomed her like an old friend, but as she unlocked the heavy wooden doors, Anna sensed the difference in the air. Mrs. Henderson, who had been shelving books at the library for 20 years, gave her a tight smile and quickly disappeared behind the biography section. The morning cleaning crew avoided meeting her eyes. Anna settled at the circulation desk, logging into the computer system with practiced ease. She focused on the familiar routine, checking in returned books, sorting hold requests, preparing overdue notices. The mundane tasks helped steady her nerves as the library slowly filled with morning patrons. Some regular visitors treated her exactly as they always had. Old Mr. Peterson asked for help finding his favorite Western authors, his rheumy eyes twinkling as he congratulated her on her marriage, without a hint of judgment. But others, like the mother who usually brought her children for story time, hurried past with quick, nervous glances. "Did you hear?" a whispered voice carried from the periodicals section. "The librarian married that biker gang leader." "Shh, she might hear you." Anna's cheeks burned, but she kept her head high, remembering the gentle way Jax had arranged those daisies on her counter. These people didn't know him like she was beginning to. The morning crept into afternoon. Anna was organizing the return cart when she heard the library's front door bang open. She looked up to see Luke stumbling in, his face ashen. His usual energetic bounce was gone, replaced by jerky, anxious movements. "Anna," he hissed, grabbing her arm. "I need to talk to you, now." She followed him to one of the private study rooms, concern growing at his uncharacteristic behavior. Luke's hands shook as he pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "This was on my windshield this morning," he said, smoothing it out on the table. Anna's blood ran cold as she read the simple message. "We didn't forget." The signature below was unmistakable, the same stylized mark she'd seen in newspaper articles about cartel violence in nearby cities. "I thought—" Luke's voice cracked. "Jack said we'd be safe. He promised you, that's why—" He gestured helplessly at her wedding ring. Anna pulled her brother into a tight hug, feeling him trembling. "It's going to be okay," she whispered, though her own heart was racing. "We'll figure this out." The rest of her workday passed in a blur. She made silly mistakes, misshelving books, typing gibberish into the computer, her mind spinning with worry and growing anger. By closing time, her emotions had crystallized into a hard knot of determination. The drive home to Jax's house, their house now, she supposed, seemed endless. When she finally pulled into the driveway, she found him in the kitchen, heating up leftover casserole that someone from the motorcycle club had dropped off. "You promised," she said without preamble, her voice tight with emotion. "You promised Luke would be safe if I married you." Jax turned slowly, his expression grave. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. "Anna, don't Anna me." She pulled out the threatening note, slapping it onto the counter. "They left this on his car. The cartel isn't backing off at all, are they?" Jax picked up the note, his jaw clenching as he read it. "I'm handling it," he said quietly. "Handling it? That's all you can say?" Anna's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "My brother is terrified. I married you to protect him, and now it seems like nothing's changed." "Everything's changed," Jax insisted, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "There's so much happening that you don't understand. Then help me understand." Anna stepped closer, looking up at him. "I'm your wife now, even if it's just on paper. I deserve to know what's really going on." Jax's expression softened for a moment, and he reached out as if to touch her shoulder before letting his hand fall back to his side. "Please," he said, his voice rough. I need you to trust me. I'm doing everything I can to keep both of you safe." Before Anna could respond, Jax's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his face hardening into the mask she recognized from their first meeting at the courthouse. "I have to take this," he said, already moving toward the back door. "We'll talk more later." Anna watched through the kitchen window as Jax paced in the backyard, phone pressed to his ear. Even through the glass, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his free hand clenched into a fist at his side. Unable to resist, she crept closer to the window, straining to hear. Jax's voice was low and controlled, but a few words carried clearly through the evening air. "Cartel activity. Not backing down." The conversation ended quickly. Instead of coming back inside, Jax remained in the yard, his broad shoulders slumped as if under an invisible weight. The last rays of sunset painted him in shades of gold and shadow, and Anna felt a sudden, unexpected ache in her chest. Through a gap in the blinds, she studied this man who was now her husband. In the growing darkness, he looked less like the fearsome leader everyone whispered about, and more like someone carrying burdens too heavy for one person to bear. She thought about the way he'd flipped pancakes that first morning, how carefully he'd helped elderly veterans at the charity ride, how gently he'd placed those daisies on her counter. The mystery of Jax Maddox seemed to deepen with each passing day, and Anna wasn't sure anymore if that scared her or intrigued her. Maybe, she realized as she watched him finally turn toward the house, it was a little bit of both. The following evening settled over the house like a heavy blanket. Anna pushed her green beans around her plate, watching Jax do the same with his barely touched meatloaf. The silence between them felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Every now and then, Jax would check his phone, his face growing more tense with each glance. The doorbell rang just as Anna was clearing the dishes. Jax jumped up so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. "I'll get it," he said, his voice tight. Anna nodded, continuing to load the dishwasher while straining to hear the murmured conversation at the front door. She caught fragments of whispered words, evidence, and operation that made her pause. The voices moved away from the door, heading toward the garage. Anna waited a few moments, then quietly followed. The garage door was slightly ajar, warm light spilling through the crack. She crept closer, her heart pounding. "Can't keep her in the dark forever, Jax," a gravelly voice was saying. It belonged to an older man Anna didn't recognize. "She's involved now, whether you like it or not." "I'm trying to protect her," Jax replied, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "The less she knows, the more dangerous it is for her," the other man cut in. "Knowledge is protection, son. You know that better than anyone." Anna leaned forward, trying to see through the gap. She could make out Jax's broad shoulders and another figure, a gray-haired man in a worn suit jacket, holding what looked like an old leather briefcase. As she shifted for a better view, her elbow knocked against a stack of boxes. The top one toppled with a loud crash. The garage door swung open. Jax stood there, his face a mix of surprise and resignation. Behind him, the older man actually smiled. "Well," he said, "looks like the decision's been made for us." He stepped forward, extending his hand to Anna. "Agent Rowland, retired FBI, though these days I mostly just help your husband with his extracurricular activities." Anna shook his hand automatically, her mind spinning. "FBI?" She looked at Jax. "What's going on?" Jax ran a hand over his face. He suddenly looked much older than his 32 years. "Come in," he said quietly. "You should sit down for this." The garage was surprisingly neat, with a workbench along one wall and Jax's motorcycle parked in the center. Agent Rowland perched on a stool while Anna took the chair Jax offered her. Jax himself remained standing, his back against the workbench. "Tell her," Rowland said gently, She needs to know everything. Jax took a deep breath. For the past 5 years, he began, his voice low and controlled, I've been working to take down the cartel from the inside, gathering evidence, tracking shipments, identifying key players, passing everything to Agent Roland and his contacts in the FBI. Anna sat very still, trying to process this. But you're the leader of the Hells Angels. Yes, Jax said. That's my cover. It gives me access, credibility. His hands clenched at his sides. But it wasn't always just a cover. He moved restlessly, pacing the small space. When I was younger, much younger, I was angry, reckless, got mixed up with the wrong people. When I tried to get out, he stopped, and Anna saw real pain flash across his face. The cartel killed my mother, left her body on our front porch as a message. Oh, Jax, Anna whispered, her heart aching. That's when I met Roland, Jax continued. He was the investigating agent. He helped me channel that anger into something useful. We started building a case, piece by piece. The Hells Angels were already on the cartel's radar, so it made sense to use them as my way in. Over time, I worked my way up, earned trust, gathered intel. It's been a long game, Roland added, but we're close now, very close to bringing down their entire operation. Anna's mind was racing. The marriage, she said suddenly. That's why you needed to marry me? For protection? Jax nodded slowly. A married man with a civilian wife is harder to touch without drawing attention. Federal attention. The cartel knows this. They prefer to target loners, people who won't be missed. He met her eyes. I never wanted to drag you into this, Anna, but when I saw Luke getting pulled into their web, I couldn't let what happened to my mother happen to someone else. It wasn't about possession, he added quietly. It was never about controlling you. It was about keeping both you and Luke safe while we finish this. Anna felt tears pricking at her eyes. All this time, she'd thought Jax was just a dangerous man who'd forced her into marriage. Instead, he was carrying the weight of his mother's murder, fighting a secret war against the people who'd killed her, all while trying to protect others from the same fate. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. The less you knew, the safer you were, Jax replied. At least that's what I told myself. He glanced at Roland. But maybe I was wrong about that. Knowledge is power, Roland said, standing and picking up his briefcase. And now that she knows she can help, we could use someone with her research skills. Jax's head snapped up. No, absolutely not. That's not your decision anymore, Anna said firmly, surprising herself. I'm already involved. Let me help. Roland smiled. Smart woman. He headed for the door. I'll be in touch. Think about what we discussed, Jax. After he left, silence fell in the garage. Anna looked at Jax. Really looked at him, seeing past the tough exterior to the weight he'd been carrying all these years. The pain, the dedication, the lonely mission he'd set for himself. I'm sorry, he said finally, for not telling you sooner, for bringing this into your life. You saved my brother, Anna replied softly. And now you're trying to save others. Don't apologize for that. Jax nodded once, then turned away, clearly overwhelmed. I need to make some calls, he said roughly. Get some rest. Long after Jax had gone to bed, Anna sat at the kitchen table, her mind still processing everything she'd learned. Her gaze fell on the vase of wild daisies Jax had brought her days ago. They were wilted now, the petals drooping, but somehow they seemed more meaningful than ever. A small, gentle gesture from a man carrying such heavy burdens. In the quiet of the kitchen, watching those wilting flowers, Anna finally understood the true complexity of the man she'd married. Not just the intimidating biker everyone feared, but someone who'd turned his pain into purpose, who'd sacrificed everything to protect others from experiencing his loss. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen curtains, casting warm patches across the worn linoleum floor. Anna sat at the table, stirring her coffee absently while watching Jax move around the kitchen. He seemed different this morning, less guarded, but also more uncertain, as if revealing his secret had left him exposed in ways he wasn't used to. He placed a plate of toast in front of her, slightly burnt as usual. Anna smiled, despite herself. For all his capabilities, cooking remained a challenge. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, setting down her spoon, "about everything you told me last night." Jax paused, his shoulders tensing slightly as he stood at the counter. "I'm staying," Anna continued, her voice growing stronger. "Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because no one should have to carry this kind of burden alone." He turned slowly to face her, his expression carefully neutral. "Anna, you don't—" "I know I don't have to," she interrupted gently. "That's the point. This is my choice." Something shifted in Jax's face then, a softening around his eyes that made him look younger, more vulnerable. He sat down heavily in the chair across from her, running a hand through his hair. "It's dangerous," he said finally. "So is letting evil people hurt others while we stand by and do nothing," Anna replied. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You sound like my mother." Later that afternoon, Anna found herself walking into the Hells Angels clubhouse for the first time. The building was surprisingly clean and well-maintained, with memorial photos lining the walls and a small American flag displayed prominently near the entrance. Jax led her into the main room where several men were gathered. The inner circle, she realized. They looked up as she entered, and Anna felt a moment of nervousness before straightening her spine. "Gentlemen," Jax said, his voice carrying authority but also warmth, "I'd like you to properly meet my wife." One by one, they introduced themselves. There was Mike, a Vietnam veteran with kind eyes and a silver star he never talked about. Tom, a widowed mechanic who raised 3 daughters on his own. Dave, a former teacher who lost his job to addiction, but found sobriety and purpose in the club. Each man had a story, Anna realized, of loss and redemption, of finding brotherhood when they needed it most. "We've heard good things about you, Mrs. Maddox," Mike said, his weathered face creasing in a smile. "Anyone who stands by Jax the way you have is family to us." As the afternoon progressed, Anna began to understand the unwritten rules that governed their world. Loyalty wasn't just expected, it was sacred. Silence protected not just secrets, but lives. And above all else, they protected those who couldn't protect themselves. She watched as they discussed upcoming charity rides, debated the best routes for emergency food deliveries to elderly veterans, and coordinated security for a women's shelter. These weren't the criminals she'd expected. They were guardians, in their own rough way. The sun was setting when they finally headed home. Anna's mind was full of everything she'd learned, every story she'd heard, every piece of this complex puzzle she was now part of. After dinner, they sat on the back porch, the evening air cool and sweet. For a long moment, they just listened to the crickets chirping and distant dogs barking. "Tell me about her," Anna said softly. "Your mother." Jax was quiet for so long, she thought he might not answer. Then, slowly, he began to speak. "Her name was Grace," he said, his voice low and tender. "She worked 2 jobs, waitressing and cleaning houses, but she never complained, always had a smile, always found ways to make things special." He paused, lost in memory. She loved gardenias, planted them everywhere she could, said they reminded her that beautiful things can grow in any soil. Anna listened as he shared more memories, his mother teaching him to read using old comic books, singing hymns while she cooked, dreaming out loud about the man she hoped he'd become. She had this unshakable faith, Jax continued, not just in God, but in people, in second chances. Even when I was at my worst, she never gave up on me. The pain in his voice was raw, but there was something else, too. A deep love that time and tragedy hadn't dimmed. Later that night, Anna lay in bed, the door cracked open to let in the cool night air. From somewhere in the house, she heard a soft, melodic humming. The tune was old, something that might have been sung in churches generations ago. She closed her eyes, picturing a younger Jax learning that lullaby from his mother, holding on to it through all the dark years that followed. As the gentle notes drifted through the hallway, Anna felt tears slip down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from understanding. Understanding that sometimes the strongest hearts are the ones that have been broken and pieced back together, held intact by love and memory and purpose. The humming continued, soft and sweet, a mother's love echoing through time, carried in her son's voice like a prayer. The morning sun filtered through the library windows as Anna sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of old property records and business filings. Her fingers traced across yellowed pages, her librarian's mind cataloging every detail that might prove useful. The familiar scent of aged paper and leather bindings brought her comfort as she worked, even as her heart raced with the urgency of her task. Just doing some historical research, she'd told her coworkers with a smile when they questioned the unusual materials piled on her desk. It wasn't entirely a lie. She was researching history, just not the kind they imagined. Anna carefully noted addresses of abandoned warehouses, cross-referencing them with recent property transfers. She marked locations on an old county map, looking for patterns in the seemingly random data. Years of organizing library collections had taught her to spot connections others might miss. By late afternoon, her notebook was filled with detailed observations. A string of cash-only purchases along the county line, businesses that changed hands frequently, with the same names appearing in different combinations, properties that seemed to serve no clear purpose, but had recent utility connections. The sun was setting when she finally packed up her findings. Her colleague Sarah gave her a concerned look as she gathered her things. "Everything okay, Anna? You've been awful quiet these past few days." Anna managed a reassuring smile. "Just fine. Working on a special project." The drive home felt longer than usual, her mind racing with possibilities hidden in the documents she'd discovered. When she pulled into the driveway, she found Jax's motorcycle already there, unusual for this time of day. Inside, she found him at the dining room table, his laptop open and phone pressed to his ear. He looked up as she entered, his expression tense but softening at the sight of her. He ended his call quickly. "You're home early," she said, setting down her bag. "Got some concerning reports." He ran a hand through his hair. A gesture she was learning meant he was worried. "But first, show me what you found today." Anna spread her materials across the wooden table as Jax turned on the warm table lamp. The golden light created a cozy circle around them as they bent over her notes together. His shoulder brushed against hers as he leaned in to study the map she'd marked. "See these properties?" She pointed to several locations marked in red. They were all purchased within 6 months of each other. Cash sales, different buyer names but similar patterns in the paperwork. And look at how they form a rough circle around the county border. Jax's eyes narrowed as he studied the pattern. "They're creating a perimeter," he muttered. "Staging areas, probably." They worked late into the evening, Anna's research skills complementing Jax's street knowledge. She watched his face as he made connections, his jaw tightening when something clicked into place. Hours passed as they pieced together the puzzle, empty coffee mugs collecting between them. Around midnight, Jax's phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the message. "What is it?" Anna asked, though part of her didn't want to know. "Enforcers," he said grimly. "3 of them spotted in Marshall County yesterday, getting closer." He stood abruptly, dialing his phone. "I'm calling everyone in. We need to be ready." Anna watched as he paced the kitchen, issuing rapid-fire instructions to his men. His voice was calm, but carried an edge of steel she hadn't heard before. Within minutes, she could hear the distant rumble of motorcycles approaching. "Come on," Jax said, holding out his hand. "Let's wait on the porch." The night air was heavy with approaching rain as they settled onto the porch steps. Anna drew her cardigan tighter around her shoulders, watching as bikes began pulling into the yard. The headlights cut through the darkness like searching eyes, their beams catching the low-hanging clouds. One by one, Jax's men arrived. Mike, Tom, Dave, and others she'd met at the clubhouse. They parked in a loose semicircle, engines falling silent as thunder growled in the distance. The men gathered in small groups, speaking in low voices, their faces serious in the dim porch light. Jax sat beside her, their shoulders touching. His presence felt solid, reassuring, even as tension radiated from him. After a while, he spoke so quietly she almost missed it. "I'm scared, Anna." She turned to look at him, surprised by the admission. His face was partially hidden in shadow, but she could see the vulnerability there. "Not of them," he continued, his voice rough. "I've been fighting them for years. I'm scared of—" He swallowed hard. "Of losing you. Of them hurting you to get to me. I couldn't bear it if—" His voice trailed off as another rumble of thunder rolled across the sky. Anna reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. His skin was warm despite the cool air, and she could feel a slight tremor in his grip. "I'm not going anywhere," she said firmly. "We're in this together now." More bikes arrived, their headlights sweeping across the yard like searchlights. The air grew thicker with the promise of rain, and lightning flickered in the distance. Anna watched the gathering of men, veterans, fathers, brothers, all standing ready to face whatever was coming. Thunder cracked overhead, closer now, as if nature itself was acknowledging the gravity of the moment. Jax's hand tightened around hers, and they sat in silence, watching the storm clouds gather and listening to the low murmur of voices in the yard. The first heavy drops of rain began to fall, pattering on the roof above them. Still, neither moved. They stayed there on the porch steps, hands clasped, as the storm drew nearer and the night grew darker. Anna was washing dishes when she heard the rumble of Jax's motorcycle in the driveway. Something about the engine's sound seemed off, irregular, hesitant. She dried her hands quickly and went to the door, her heart catching in her throat when she saw him dismounting with obvious stiffness. "Jax," she called, hurrying down the porch steps. "What happened?" He tried to wave her off, but she could see the blood on his knuckles, the way he favored his left side. His leather jacket was scuffed and dirty, and a bruise was forming along his jaw. "It's nothing," he muttered, but his voice was rough with exhaustion. "Just ran into some cartel scouts. Had to make sure they understood they weren't welcome here." "Inside, now." Anna's voice was firm but gentle as she took his arm. To her surprise, he didn't resist, letting her guide him through the door and into the kitchen. Under the bright kitchen lights, the damage looked worse. Anna's hands trembled slightly as she gathered the first aid kit from under the sink. Jax sat heavily in one of the wooden chairs, his broad shoulders slumped with fatigue. "Take off your jacket," she instructed, setting supplies on the table. "And don't you dare tell me it's nothing again." A ghost of a smile crossed his face as he shrugged out of the leather jacket, wincing. "Yes, ma'am." Anna wet a clean cloth with warm water and began carefully cleaning his scraped knuckles. The kitchen was quiet, except for the soft ticking of the clock and the occasional sharp intake of breath when she touched a particularly tender spot. "You can't keep doing this," she said softly, dabbing antiseptic on a deep cut. "Running headfirst into danger without backup." Had to. His voice was low, strained. "They were getting too close to town, too close to you." Anna's hands stilled for a moment. "And what good will you be to anyone if you get yourself killed?" She resumed cleaning his wounds, but her touch was gentler. "You're not invincible, Jax." "Doesn't matter if I—" "It matters to me." The words came out sharper than she intended, and she felt him tense under her hands. Rain began pattering against the windows, a soft counterpoint to the tension in the room. Anna finished bandaging his hands and started examining the bruise on his jaw. As her fingers brushed his face, something in Jax seemed to crack. "I couldn't save her," he whispered, his voice breaking. "My mother? I wasn't there when they came for her." Anna's heart ached at the raw pain in his voice. She pulled up another chair, sitting close enough that their knees touched. "I was trying to get out," he continued, staring at his bandaged hands. "Thought I could just walk away from it all, but they—" He swallowed hard. "They made sure I understood the cost of leaving. And now I've dragged you into this mess, too. You and Luke, you deserve better than living with this danger hanging over you." "Jax, look at me." Anna waited until his eyes met hers. "You are not defined by the world you were born into. Your mother's death was not your fault. And I'm here because I choose to be." "How can you say that?" His voice was rough with emotion. "After everything I've brought into your life, the danger, the fear—" "Because I see you," she said simply. "Not the reputation, not the leather jacket, not the man everyone else assumes you are. I see the man who makes me burnt pancakes, who leaves wild daisies on my counter, who risks everything to protect people he's never met." The rain fell harder outside, drumming against the roof. Jax's breathing was uneven as he reached up to touch her face with bandaged fingers. "I love you," he whispered, the words seeming to surprise even him. "God help me, I've fallen in love with you. But I know you can't, that you wouldn't." Anna leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, soft and sweet. When she pulled back, his eyes were wide with wonder. "I care about you," she said softly. "More than you realize. More than I thought possible when this all started." Jax pulled her close, careful of his injuries, and she felt him shaking slightly. They moved to the living room couch, where Anna tucked herself against his side. The storm continued outside, but in here, in this moment, there was only warmth and the steady beat of his heart under her ear. They talked quietly as the hours passed, sharing memories and fears and hopes. Eventually, Anna felt Jax's breathing even out as he drifted to sleep, his arms still protective around her. She smiled softly and let herself relax against him, listening to the rain and his heartbeat until sleep claimed her too. When the first rays of dawn crept through the windows, Anna stirred awake. They were still on the couch, fully clothed, and Jax's arms were wrapped securely around her. Even in sleep, he held her as if she were something precious. She watched the sunrise paint golden light across his face, softening the worry lines that usually creased his forehead, and felt her heart swell with tenderness for this complicated, gentle man who had unexpectedly become so dear to her. The next 2 days unfolded like a dream, the kind Anna never wanted to wake from. After their night on the couch, something fundamental had shifted between them. The awkward silences transformed into comfortable quiet. Their shared meals became opportunities for gentle conversation rather than tense obligation. On Monday morning, Anna found herself humming as she shelved books at the library. She couldn't help but smile, remembering how Jax had actually burned the toast that morning, too distracted by watching her drink her coffee to notice the smoke. His embarrassed grunt and the way he'd quickly made fresh pieces had been oddly endearing. That evening, she'd come home to find him working on his motorcycle in the driveway. He'd looked up at the sound of her car, and the soft smile that crossed his face made her heart flutter. They'd eaten takeout Chinese food on the back porch, talking about nothing important while fireflies danced in the gathering dusk. Tuesday followed much the same pattern. Jax had club business to attend to, but he called twice just to check in. When he came home that night, they'd worked together on her research files, their shoulders touching as they pored over property records and old newspaper clippings. It felt normal, safe, like maybe they could build something real from these unexpected circumstances. Wednesday started just as peacefully. The morning sun streamed through the library windows as Anna organized the children's reading corner. She was straightening a row of picture books when her phone vibrated in her pocket. Seeing Luke's roommate's name on the screen, she answered with a smile. "Hey, Tom, what's up?" "Anna?" Tom's voice was high with panic. "Have you heard from Luke? He never came home last night. I thought maybe he crashed at your place, but he's not answering his phone, and his bed hasn't been slept in, and—" The picture book slipped from Anna's suddenly numb fingers. "What do you mean he never came home?" Her voice sounded strange in her own ears, distant and thin. "He left for work yesterday morning like usual, but he never came back. I tried calling the garage where he works, but they said he left on time. Anna, I'm really worried. I'll call you back." Anna ended the call with trembling fingers and immediately dialed Jax's number. He answered on the first ring. "Anna? What's wrong?" "Luke's missing." The words came out in a rush. "His roommate says he never came home last night. Jax, what if they—" "I'm on my way," he cut in, his voice tight with controlled fear. "Where was he last seen?" "The garage where he works. Please hurry." "Stay at the library. I'll pick you up in 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes were the longest of Anna's life. She paced between the stacks, fighting back tears, jumping at every sound. When Jax's motorcycle roared into the parking lot, she ran outside without even grabbing her purse. They found Luke's car in the employee parking lot behind the garage. The sight of it made Anna's blood run cold. A crude symbol had been spray-painted across the driver's side door, a stylized snake wrapped around a dagger. Even without Jax's sharp intake of breath, she would have known it was the cartel's calling card. "No," she whispered, reaching out to touch the still tacky paint. "No, no, no!" An electronic chirping sound cut through her rising panic. They both froze. The sound came again, a phone ringing, muffled but close by. Jax moved first, following the sound to a nearby dumpster. He reached inside and pulled out a cheap burner phone. The phone rang a third time. Jax's face was granite as he answered, putting it on. Speaker. "Who is this?" A smooth voice replied in accented English. "Ah, the famous Iron Saint. I was beginning to think you wouldn't find our little message in time." Anna pressed her hands to her mouth, stifling a sob. Jax's free hand found hers, squeezing tightly. "Where is he?" Jax's voice was deadly calm. "Alive, for now." The commander's tone was almost pleasant. "Whether he stays that way depends entirely on you. Come alone to the old Miller warehouse on Route 12. You have until midnight. If we see anyone else, police, your club members, or your pretty new wife, the boy dies slowly. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good. And Jax?" Don't bother trying to trace this call. The phone will be destroyed as soon as we hang up. There was a pause. It's time to pay for your interference, Iron Saint. Tick-tock. The line went dead. Anna's knees gave out, and she would have fallen if Jax hadn't caught her. He held her as she shook with silent sobs, his own breathing ragged. "We have to call the police," she finally managed to say. "We can't." Jax's voice was hollow. "They'll kill him the moment they spot any law enforcement. You know that." "Then your club." "No." He pressed his forehead against hers. "I won't risk Luke's life, or yours." "Jax, please." She clutched at his leather jacket. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." He helped her stand, then led her to his bike. "I'm taking you home first." The ride back to their house passed in a blur. Anna felt numb, disconnected from reality. This couldn't be happening, not when things had finally started feeling right between them. Inside, Jax moved with terrible purpose. He went to his office and began writing. Instructions for his club, letters to his lawyers, documents Anna couldn't bring herself to look at too closely. When he was done, he disappeared into their bedroom and returned with something small clutched in his hand. "Anna." His voice was gentle as he took her trembling hands in his. "I need you to listen to me." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Don't. Please don't say goodbye." "I have to." He pressed something cool and metal into her palm, a silver coin worn smooth with age. "This was my mother's. She carried it every day of her life, said it reminded her that faith can move mountains." His voice cracked slightly. "I want you to have it." "Jax." He cupped her face in his rough hands. "Loving you has been the only pure thing I've ever done. The only thing that wasn't tainted by violence or revenge. I need you to know that." Anna clutched the coin to her chest, feeling like her heart was being torn in two. "I can't lose you both. Please. I'm going to do everything I can to get Luke back to you." He kissed her forehead, then stepped back. "That's a promise." She followed him outside, barely able to see through her tears as he swung his leg over his motorcycle. The engine roared to life, and Anna pressed her face into the leather jacket he'd left, draped over her shoulders, breathing in his familiar scent as she watched him disappear into the gathering darkness. The coin in her palm seemed to burn with the weight of everything unsaid between them, everything they might never get to say. As his taillights faded into the night, Anna's legs gave out and she sank to her knees in the driveway, her sobs echoing in the empty night air. Anna stared at the empty driveway until her tears ran dry. Then something inside her shifted. She couldn't just sit here and wait. Standing up, she pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called Agent Rowland. He answered on the first ring. "Anna, what's happened?" "They have Luke. Jax went to trade himself." Her voice cracked. "Please, I need your help." "Where are you now?" "At home." "Stay there. I'm calling my federal contacts and heading to you." His tone was sharp with urgency. "Don't do anything until I arrive." Within 30 minutes, Rowland's car pulled up. Right behind him came Danny, Jax's weathered second-in-command, his face grim in the porch light. They gathered around the kitchen table where Jax had left his papers. Danny spread out a map, while Anna explained everything that had happened. Her hands still trembled, but her voice stayed steady. "Jax wouldn't have gone in blind," Danny said, studying the documents. "He always leaves breadcrumbs." Anna remembered how carefully Jax had arranged the papers. "Look at the corners," she said suddenly. "The way they're folded." Rowland caught on immediately. Together they began matching the creased corners, forming a pattern that revealed coordinates marked in nearly invisible dots. "Clever boy," Rowland muttered. He's marked backup positions." Danny was already on his phone, speaking in quick, hushed tones. "The Angels are mobilizing. Every chapter within 200 miles. Through the night, they worked tirelessly. Anna's librarian skills proved invaluable as she cross-referenced local maps with Jax's markings. Roland coordinated with his federal contacts, setting up a silent perimeter. Danny's phone buzzed constantly with updates from incoming riders. As dawn broke, Anna stepped onto the front porch. The rumble started low, like distant thunder. Then, one by one, motorcycles appeared on the horizon. They came in waves, 53 bikes in total, their chrome glinting in the early morning light. Hard-faced men and women, some bearing military patches, others showing the marks of years on the road. All of them wore the Angels' colors, all of them ready to stand for one of their own. "Your chariot awaits," Roland said softly, gesturing to a dark support van. "We'll be running command and coordination from there." Anna climbed in, her fingers wrapped around Jax's mother's coin. The metal was warm from her constant grip. As they pulled out, the bikes fell into formation around them, a protective escort of chrome and leather. The convoy wound through back roads, avoiding main highways. Anna watched the landscape change from suburban sprawl to dense forest. After 3 hours, they turned onto a logging road that led to an abandoned lumber mill. The mill rose before them like a steel giant, its rusty walls stretching up into the morning sky. Broken windows gaped like empty eyes. The bikes cut their engines one by one, leaving an eerie silence broken only by the crunch of gravel under boots. Anna's heart thundered in her chest as she peered through the van's window. Somewhere in that massive structure, her brother and her husband were waiting. The coin pressed into her palm, a constant reminder of everything at stake. The silence stretched, thick with tension. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They all waited for the signal that would start whatever came next. Through the windshield, Anna watched the sun climb higher, casting long shadows across the mill's weathered facade. Her breath fogged the glass as she whispered a silent prayer, clutching the memorial coin like a lifeline. Inside the abandoned lumber mill, dust motes danced in the weak sunlight filtering through broken windows. Jax knelt on the concrete floor, his face bruised and bloody, but his eyes still burning with defiance. Behind him, Luke sat tied to a support beam, tears streaming silently down his face. 3 cartel enforcers circled them like hungry wolves, their boots scraping against the gritty floor. The leader, a man with a face like weathered leather, held his gun trained on Jax's head. "You really thought you could take us down?" he sneered. "That a biker playing hero could destroy what we built?" Jax spat blood onto the floor. "I already did. Your operations are exposed. The feds have everything." The sudden explosion of gunfire outside made everyone flinch. Shouts and the roar of motorcycles filled the air. The cartel members exchanged nervous glances as chaos erupted around the building. "Finish them!" the leader barked, backing toward the exit. "Now!" Anna crouched behind a stack of old pallets with Agent Roland as the Angels and federal agents stormed the perimeter. Her heart nearly stopped when she spotted movement in the shadows. A 4th enforcer, younger than the others, creeping up behind Jax with his weapon raised. Without thinking, Anna broke from cover. Roland grabbed for her but missed. She ran forward, her footsteps echoing through the cavernous space. "Wait!" she cried out, her voice cracking. Her fingers found Jax's mother's memorial coin, and she held it up, the metal catching the light. "Please, look at this!" The young enforcer hesitated, his gun wavering slightly. "This belonged to his mother," Anna continued, her voice steady despite her terror. "She was killed because of this endless cycle of violence. Is that the legacy you want? More mothers crying, More families destroyed? The man's hands began to shake. Up close, Anna could see how young he really was, barely older than Luke. You have a choice, she said softly. Right here, right now. You can be the one who stops the bloodshed instead of adding to it. Time seemed to freeze as their eyes met. Anna saw the conflict in his face, the weight of her words sinking in. Then, slowly, he lowered his weapon. It clattered to the floor as tears filled his eyes. The sound of that dropping gun became a signal. Other weapons followed. Within moments, federal agents swarmed in, securing the scene as the remaining cartel members surrendered. Anna rushed to Jax, who slumped forward into her arms. "Anna," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion and relief. "My Anna." She held him tightly, feeling his heart pounding against her chest. Behind them, agents were cutting Luke free. Her brother stumbled forward and wrapped his arms around them both, sobbing. The wail of approaching sirens filled the air as Anna rocked them gently, her own tears falling freely. The memorial coin was still clutched in her hand, pressed between her palm and Jax's leather jacket, a reminder of what they'd lost, what they'd gained, and the power of choosing love over violence. Around them, agents secured the scene and medical teams rushed in, but Anna barely noticed. All that mattered was the steady beat of Jax's heart against her cheek and Luke's trembling hands gripping her shoulders. They were alive. They were together. They were safe. In the chaos following the rescue, federal agents swarmed the lumber mill, handcuffing cartel leaders who had terrorized the community for years. Anna watched as they were led away in chains, the evidence Jax had meticulously gathered, finally bringing them to justice. The Hells Angels formed a protective escort around the ambulance, carrying Luke to Willow Bend General Hospital. Their chrome bikes gleamed under the emergency lights, a wall of steel ensuring no last-minute revenge attempts would succeed. At the hospital, Anna refused to leave Jax's side. She sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair while doctors examined his injuries: 3 bruised ribs, a split lip, and exhaustion that ran bone deep. Every time he winced, her hand tightened around his. "You need rest too," Jax whispered, but Anna just shook her head. When sunrise painted the hospital room in soft gold the next morning, they finally headed home. Jax moved slowly, one arm wrapped protectively around his ribs. Anna supported him up the front steps, both of them barely believing they had made it back. The town's response surprised them both. Mrs. Henderson from next door brought over a steaming chicken casserole. The Methodist prayer circle sent flowers. Even gruff old Pete from the hardware store dropped off a get well card. On Wednesday, Police Chief Barnes knocked on their door. The man who had once watched Jax with suspicion now stood awkwardly on their porch. "I was wrong about you," he admitted. "What you did for this town, taking down that cartel, thank you." A week after the rescue, Jax called a meeting at the Angels clubhouse. The room was packed. Every member who could ride had come to hear him speak. Anna stood quietly in the corner, watching these rough men who had become family. "It's time," Jax said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "I'm retiring from leadership." A murmur ran through the crowd. Old Tom, a Vietnam veteran who had been with the club for 30 years, stepped forward first. "You protected us all," he said gruffly, pulling Jax into a careful hug. "Gave us purpose when we were lost, led us toward helping others instead of causing trouble." One by one, they came forward. Mechanics, truckers, retired soldiers. Each had a story about how Jax had changed their lives, guided them toward redemption, shown them how to be better men. Through it all, Anna watched her husband's face. The guilt and burden he had carried for so long was finally lifting, replaced by peace. When the last man had spoken, Jax slowly removed his leather cut, the vest that marked him as their leader. His fingers traced the patches, memories of a decade of service written in thread and leather. With reverence, he laid it on the old wooden table at the front of the room. The same table where he had first accepted leadership, where he had planned countless charity rides, where he had plotted to bring down the cartel. In that moment of letting go, he looked lighter than Anna had ever seen him. The autumn air turned crisp as September rolled into October, bringing with it a sense of renewal to Willow Bend. 3 weeks after Jax's retirement from the Angels, life had settled into rhythms that felt both strange and wonderful. Jax threw himself into his new venture, a motorcycle repair shop he named Second Chance's Custom Works. The weathered brick building on Mason Street had once been abandoned, but now hummed with activity. He specifically sought out veterans struggling to find their footing and young men who needed guidance more than judgment. The sound of tools and easy laughter drifted through the open garage doors most days. "You're good with that carburetor, Danny," Jax would say to the 19-year-old who once ran with a rough crowd. "Keep that focus, and you'll be running your own bay in no time." Meanwhile, Anna discovered an unexpected calling. It started when one of the older Angels admitted he struggled to read his granddaughter's letters. That confession led to quiet evening classes in the library's back room, where aging bikers learned to read and write without shame. Their weathered hands carefully formed letters while Anna guided them with endless patience. "Never thought I'd be doing homework at 65, old Tom chuckled during one session. "But my old lady sure loves getting those love notes now." One particularly clear evening, as the October sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jax and Anna drove out to the small memorial garden where his mother's ashes rested. The place was peaceful, tucked away at the county's edge where wildflowers grew in abundance. Jax knelt carefully in the grass, setting down a simple white candle. His hands, still bearing the calluses of years of hard work, shielded the flame as he lit it. The soft glow illuminated his face as he bowed his head. "Thank you, Mama," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You always said God had a plan, even when I couldn't see it. You led me through the darkness, led me to Anna." Anna stood quietly behind him, her heart full as she watched this tender moment between mother and son. Above them, stars began appearing in the deepening twilight, bright and clear in the country sky. After a long moment, Jax stood and turned to face her. His eyes, usually so guarded, shone with open vulnerability. "You know," he said softly, taking her hands in his, "my whole life, good things came with a price. Everything was a trade, a debt, a calculation. But you—" He paused, squeezing her fingers gently. "You were the only unexpected blessing I ever received, the only pure gift God saw fit to give me." Anna felt tears well up in her eyes as she looked at this man who had traversed such a long road from darkness to light. She reached up to touch his cheek, feeling the rough stubble beneath her palm. "Our marriage wasn't meant to last," she replied softly, her voice carrying in the quiet evening air. "But God had other plans." Jax pulled her close, wrapping his strong arms around her. They stood there in the growing darkness, holding each other as a gentle breeze rustled through the trees. The wind carried the sweet scent of autumn leaves and new beginnings, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful stories grow from unexpected seeds. Finally, they separated and began walking back to their truck, hand in hand. The gravel crunched beneath their boots as they moved through the starlit evening. Neither rushed. They were simply content in the knowledge that whatever the future held, they would face it together. A future they never imagined, but now cherished with all their hearts. If this story made you pause, reflect, or even smile, Don't forget to subscribe. I post daily, and the next story might be exactly what you need to hear.